Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to discovering just how much Rule 34 there is of Warframe and realizing, hey, that's pretty good. Also realizing that I'm a leading contributing factor to the member of that Rule 34. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a while since we've done one of these deep dives, huh? But today we are going to be taking a deeper look at one of the frames we already have a beginner's guide for, exploring the power and potency that truly lies within, taking the basics of what we know and elevating them to the reveal just how much stronger we can make said frame. Baruuk is the subject of today's video, and before we start, I'd like to quickly tease you, tempt you if you will, with a quick thing or two about just to get you in the mood. And no, it's not me whispering Kuva into your ear, because that would be weird. Now, if you're watching this video, we are going to have the assumption that you've watched my beginner's video to Baruuk, or you already have some understanding of how he works. It's likely that I'll be reworking the beginner's video at some point soon to accommodate some of the new changes and my more recent understanding as to how he works. But let it be known that my beginner's guide is absolutely and still very easily usable for anyone that wants to pick up the foundations of how Baruuk works. It's just the modding section might not be as apt as it once was, and we'll correct that in the future, and in some element through this video as well. And of course, what kind of video would this be if I didn't conject you with some kind of advertisement towards my Twitter and all that jazz? So if you like the content and you want to see more of these deep dives and all that kind of good stuff with us exploring the deeper, finer recesses of what frames can do and all that kind of good stuff, then please like this video, subscribe, and let me know what frames you would like to see deep dives of in the future down in the comments below. I guarantee you all that kind of stuff helps on the algorithm, helps us our channel get out there further. And of course, if you feel like being part of these recordings, these are recorded on Twitch for you to be part of. There'll be a link to my Twitter, Twitch, and all that kind of good stuff down below. Right off the bat, I think it's worth talking a little bit about Baruuk himself. He's a frame that in my eyes has received a bit of an unnecessary rap of being a bit of a bad frame. But why is that, you may ask? I feel it's been associated with the idea of being not such an upfront and obvious frame with his nature of playstyle. People look at a frame like Sarin and go, wow, I press 1 and I wipe the map? That's good. And that almost gets people into the mindset that if a frame isn't simple and powerful, then it's not good. And that kind of mindset is what we want to take people away from. Complexity is not a bad thing. In fact, it's something that encourages a much more integral learning pattern when you're picking up new warframes. But what if I told you that you can make Baruuk crit for 8 million damage? What if I told you that he is a status beast in the right hands, and that not only is Baruuk one of the most versatile frames in the game, but also one of the funnest and hardest hitting? You'd probably think I was mad, wouldn't you? Well, I'm not mad. Not me, no. I'm just positively insane. I mean, I'd have to be for Baruuk to be one of my top 3 most played frames, right? Baruuk relies on using your 1, 2, and 3 abilities in cyclical execution to reduce your restraint. The restraint being your energy bar down in the bottom right. See this as your resource bar that a lot of frames would have. And the lower it is, the longer you're going to be able to go into your ultimate form and wreck faces. And the longer you're in this ultimate form, the better you're going to do damage-wise and general performance-wise. The way to see Baruuk's playstyle is in 2 phases, as simply put as possible. You have your tempo phase, where you're using your first 3 abilities to lower your restraint, and build for the end blitz phase. The more active you are in your tempo phase, the more enemies you're affecting, and the quicker your restraint falls, and thus rewarding you for an active playstyle. Keeping in mind, in your blitz phase, you are still able to use your first 3 abilities to reduce your restraint further, meaning that with the right build and playstyle, you can remain indefinitely in Baruuk's Serene Storm or Blitz mode. It is just worth noting, however, that you also want to make sure that you have your abilities active in the right order, and I'm about to explain the sort of flow to your playstyle in a moment, but we'll cover that more in just a second. So now that I've tickled your taste buds with what he can do, allow me to explain my playstyle and how I get the potency out of him. Of course, remember as well, this is a build-dependent kind of video, and that what I'm about to explain is what I've achieved with my builds that I show at the end of this video. I would recommend adapting your playstyle to the builds that work for you, keeping in mind that Baruuk is not a single build type of frame. He has a lot of versatility between crowd control, general survivability, and just raw damage. So kind of use your initiative. Find what works for you, as with every frame and build. So to get into the idea of how Baruuk's playstyle works, you have to understand the importance of synergy between your first 3 abilities to build up your restraint, or reduce your restraint, sorry. So when you have your 1 active, it complements your 2 and your 3 by increasing the amount of restraint they reduce. So to start with, if you're above 50 energy, you activate your 1. After the initial cost of activating your 1, the remaining energy will allow you to have your 1 active, thus giving you survivability by allowing bullets to pass through you. Every bullet that passes through you then helps you reduce even more restraint. But, as stated, if you have your 1 active, the amount of restraint your 2 and your 3 reduces is then increased. So if you have above 50 energy after activating your 1, you then activate your 3. It's all about the energy efficiency here. You want to almost gate your abilities based on how much energy you have. So above 50 energy, activate your 1. Still above 50 energy, activate your 3. And with the right build, you'll have enough daggers around you to the point where you won't need to recast this too frequently. If you have your 1 and your 3 active and you still have above 50 energy after that, then you want to cast your 2 should there be enough enemies around you to make it worth using in the first place. Keeping in mind, even with a general power build, you'll still have enough range on you to be able to crowd control large amounts of enemies. So once you have your initial rotation down with your first 3 abilities, you'll then want to activate your 4. Now, utilizing good energy efficiency will mean you can cast on the fly, and with the right power strength, each active restraint reduction from your first 3 abilities will reduce a considerable amount of energy of your restraint bar. But once your 4's active, that's it. You do you. Blow enemies away, keep crowd controlling them, or move to Florida, have a few kids, and start paying taxes. So long as you have the energy efficiency to keep casting and keep that restraint low, it doesn't matter what you do during the blitz phase. The world is theoretically your oyster. But all of this relies on understanding where the power comes from with your build. If you don't like something that's drier than a chicken that's been left in the oven for 5 hours, this next bit might be a bit bland. But it's needed to know where the power of Baruuk will come from, as Baruuk is quite build dependent. Now realistically, even with subpar modding, you can absolutely do everything we've just mentioned, but the less efficiency of energy and the less well-rounded your build is, the less time you'll be able to spend in the blitz phase we spoke about. So it's about balancing what you have versus the build you have. So the ideal with your build for a typical power Baruuk that gets high potency and good balance of effectiveness in your other abilities is to have high efficiency to make it so that you can cast your abilities on the frequent. And so the channeling energy consumption on your 1 and 2 isn't so heavy. Complementing that, you want to actually go minimum duration so that way your 2 can be cast without that annoying cooldown between each of your casts. So minimum duration is needed to cast your 2 as much as possible. We know this already. To make sure that you can basically jump into folds of enemy lines and have large amounts of energy restraint reduction. Complemented that with lots of power strength. Heck, even with large amounts of duration, low range, and high strength, you'll still be doing decent crowd control. So the ideal with a big power Baruuk play is power strength, minimal duration, range, and a smidge of efficiency. But the power strength is where the power comes in, because that will help your restraint reduction and the overall effectiveness of your punches. So for the baseline of a power build, we want as much power strength as possible. This is because the amount of power strength we have will dictate the amount of restraint we lose per active restraint reduction. We want things like blind rage, intensify, and this will even help with transient fortitude to reduce the duration. Now, reduction of duration is quite important here, because if we go for minimal duration and even minus duration, it decreases the length of time we have between each of our casts of lull. The more times we can cast lull, the more opportunities we will have to reduce our restraint. So in an ideal situation, we're building for raw power strength as a priority. We're getting a little bit of range out of things like stretch. We're going for efficiency with fleeting expertise. And this fleeting expertise then leads us with the extra minus duration as well to help us with the more frequently casted lulls. And then on top of that, we then have some survivability. Now for the survivability, because of the new shield gating we've been introduced with and general survivability changes, adaptation makes a great choice here. But choosing any two survival mods will work wonders, just due to the way that Baruuk's innate survivability works. Any survival mod will help compound the way he works on a foundation level. Vitality and steel fiber are a great way to start, and then moving to things like adaptation and the umbral mods with their synergy will then help push your build further. As you have to keep in mind that the umbral mods with vitality and umbral intensify that you'll likely use anyway will then get their potency from their set bonus, allowing your build to be pushed even further. And finally, if you really want to push the envelope to its highest possible element, you must use the reactive storm augment. It's just going to hype the damage and be complemented by everything you've built for so far. You can definitely work without it and use something like Augur Secrets or Energy Conversion in its place. But the augment is definitely a must for the highest peak forms of damage, because it essentially is raw damage in of its nutshell. So there's, of course, other builds for Baruuk that we could talk about with things like crowd control and whatnot, but that's a bit more obvious and transparent and fit for purpose on how you mod them. So for this, we'll just focus on this one build that we initially start with, and that is pretty much what does well at everything, as well as just the raw power and numbers that he's able to generate. Now, Makari, what about Desert Wind? Well, Desert Wind is, of course, the exalted weapon that complements Serene Storm. Desert Wind, there are a couple of ways we can approach this. The first build that I'm going to demonstrate, and in my eyes, the best build to go for initially, since the new Warframe changes allows Baruuk to easily hit over 100% status, which in turn means each fist of energy you punch with will inflict many numbers, dependent on the damage type you've chosen. For this build I'm showing, you want to rely on Condition Overload due to the amount of status effects you'll be dealing, and the fact that Reactive Storm is going to push that even further. Condition Overload will work out better in the long run over Pressure Point, but Pressure Point can be used in place of Condition Overload should you wish or not have access to Condition Overload. And then you want to be utilizing the 60/60 status mods along with their raw element mods with an element that you choose to inflict huge status effects along with a high amount of base damage. Also then utilizing some crit mods along with the baseline mods to exacerbate that further. See this as the ultimate hybrid exalted weapon, where status is more the focus in this build. Or should you go for a bit of more of a nuanced approach with less numbers, but bigger numbers? This build is where you would rely on Corrupted Charge to give you a higher innate combo counter and focus purely on crit to be able to deal big red numbers, and heavy attacks for a multi-million-dollar attack. Yeah, there's a lot of damage here, and utilizing heavy attacks with the crit build is going to be more worthwhile than in the status build. This again being a bit of a hybrid, but relying more of the notion of crit to build your numbers. Now that's pretty much everything you need to know to get power out of him, but there's a couple of small little minutiae details here that we can add in that will help certain elements of Baruuk's damage out further that aren't so obvious from the word go. And that is that there is even more depth of damage here. Utilizing a Sentinel as kind of like a stat stick or other modding semantics within your Sentinel itself can help you push this further as well. And also utilizing frame synergy would be something that would end up making this video take 5 hours long, so I'm going to say leaving frame synergy to your experimentation would be more advisable here. But the TLDR of modding here with Baruuk is power strength is key. Everything else is down to playstyle preference. However, if you want to be dabbling with some very interesting semantics here, you can try and have a melee weapon that has a combo counter increasing duration mods on. So if you have combo count in duration increasing mods, you can build up a combo counter before you activate Serene Storm and utilize that higher combo count you go into Serene Storm with to dish out even bigger numbers. But again, that's something that goes into a bit of a minutia and kind of becomes a bit tedious, and that's something that you would have to definitely try and practice on your own end. But it's something that is worth doing if you want to push it even further than what we've done with this deep dive already. Now, these deep dive videos are not necessarily meant to be the most absorbable, but they're meant to be a way for me to get across how I play my frames and show off just what you can achieve when you put a lot of time into a frame that you enjoy. And if nothing else, it goes to show that every frame in this game can be powerful, and that there is no such thing as a bad frame. Yes, even looking at Zephyr, even Zephyr can be good. And I am very likely going to be making a video in the near future where we discuss this ideology of there being the best. Because realistically, there isn't. It's all about preference of choice. And Baruuk, by all accounts, is probably one of my favorite choices of frame for just having fun. For having a frame that does have high potency, but also just one of the more intuitive playstyles out there. Now, before I get distracted any further by the fact that me and my Baruuk seem to have the same fashion sense, we're going to end that video there. Hopefully this video has been informative. Once again, if you feel like joining us on the Twitch side of things, there'll be a link to my Twitch down below. If you found it informative, do let me know down in the comments. If you think I'm full of shit, then also let me know down in the comments so I can have a self-existential crisis about how bad I am at making videos. And I'll hopefully see all of you top hatters in the next video. Thank you for watching. Ta-ra!